Thank you all very much for joining us for this. So, yeah, allow me to begin this by first a couple of lines on what we are doing here and what this place is. There are always two people in the audience who have come to Lamakan for the first time. So for their sake, Lamakan is this space that was given to us, gifted to us by this visionary uncle of ours who decided that each city should have a space that is open for expression, for dialogue, for discussion, for being a cultural, intellectual space that can invite people like you and do things that would normally not be possible in commercial spaces. And that's why we owe Hassan Uncle a thanks each time we meet. We owe Farhan Humera and Eli Biju for running this as a trust that keeps such dialogue alive. And very importantly, thanking all of you for joining us when we do these programs that are strange, that need some bravado, that need some courage, but are essential if we are going to protect our country and its constitution and the whole idea of India. And with that, I introduce to you the author of this book. Again, there might be just two people here who don't know who Harsh Mander is. But for those two people, Harsh Mander embodies the ideals that Gandhiji lived for and died for. Then that's his briefest introduction. As we, his students from another century, keep reminding ourselves, he's even begun to look like Gandhi. So, and the sheer volume of work, which is why we meet today, the sheer volume of work that Harsh Mander has produced over a tumultuous 2-decade period is in itself noteworthy. He's written on each of the issues that the UN has described in its Sustainable Development Goals. The last time we were discussing his book, it was a book on health post-COVID, and that itself was a remarkable documentation of the most horrifying experience that most of us have lived through in our times. His new book, which we are discussing today, talks about one aspect of the country or one aspect of India's poverty that is often ignored. When we talk about poverty, we talk about food, hunger, or roti, sometimes about kapda, but very rarely do we talk about the makan aspect of poverty, the homelessness aspect of poverty. And who else but Harsh Mander could have written this really poignant description of what happens in urban India behind all the glitter that you'd see just round the corner. And that's the book that we are going to discuss today on behalf of Lamakan, on behalf of Hyderabad, on behalf of all of us who have the privilege of living under reinforced concrete roofs and strong big homes and not knowing even an iota of what it means to be homeless and shelterless. Welcome, sir, and welcome and thank you so much for attempting to introduce to us an aspect of our lives next door that we are unaware of. What we'll do is that, I'll show off that I work very hard. I have about 400 questions, so I'll try and go through some of those and then throw it open to the audience. So we will not have interruptions before I throw it open to the audience. May I start by by asking, okay, so one confession that I keep calling him sir because he's actually my teacher. He's taught me 32 years ago. So I owe a lot of us owe a lot to him. I owe that much more. Um, so, sir, the first question that comes right from the first page of what you've written is why are you discussing homelessness? Why is that the theme of this book?
Thank you, Amir, and also a word of thanks to Damakan, to Humaira, Farhan, and all of you, and Amir, and thank you all of you for gathering here. Very short notice. Why did I put together this book? Many reasons, but let me say, you know, that our world today is in crisis is completely apparent. What is the nature of this crisis? Um, I feel, when we watch a Trump or a Netanyahu or a Modi, it's not the personalities of these people that explain the crisis of our times. These are leaders who we choose, these are leaders who we applaud, these are leaders who are profoundly adored. Why are more and more of us choosing leaders who are teaching us to hate? Is, I think, central to understanding what I believe to be is a profound civilizational crisis of humankind. So let me start there. And if there is, if somebody, say I take a class, I used to teach for 15 years at Ahmedabad. I'm not allowed to enter there now, but I'm in many other places here and around the world. In the end, my students always ask me, can you give us a one-line kind of advice? And I say, okay, 2 words, if I have just 2 words. The first advice is be kind. I do believe that if we are able to claim our capacity to care, other things will follow. Struggles for justice will follow, corrections will follow. But first, let us care. There are many ethical systems that explain this. I like something that I'm told Prophet Muhammad said. Prophet Muhammad is frankly supposed to have said that if you observe great suffering or injustice, then what is your duty as a good human being? So he said, at the very least, respond from your heart. Some among us will be braver and will respond with our tongue. We'll speak out against injustice. A few of us will respond with our hands. My problem with my country, my people, and our world is not that there are not enough of us responding even with our tongues or our hands. It's that we are not responding from our hearts. And that is where I think kindness is where I think we will reclaim our civilization, our idea of India, so much else with kindness. So that's my beginning point. And just why about homeless people? Our failures of empathy and kindness, to me, somehow is most symbolized by our complete indifference, not just indifference, but disinterest in homeless people. Let me say why. You cannot live in a city in India, and of course in many parts of the world, but you cannot live in a city in India except when during the lockdown or when you were in hospital, where you will not see homeless people every day of our lives. And and literally their lives are transparent to us. I mean, no lives can be more transparent than the lives of homeless people because they have no walls. Yet we know them so little. It's just incredible how little we know about who they are, why are they on the streets, how are they coping, uh, what does the world look like to them. We don't know and we're not even curious. Until I went to the Supreme Court in 2010, there wasn't even a national program of any kind, even for shelters for homeless people. So I feel that, when I say, it's a very long answer, I'm sorry for that, but if our crisis, civilizational crisis, is going to be addressed firstly by being kind, having empathy, first just let's look around us, and the next time you see someone homeless on the streets, can you stop for a moment? Who's this person? What is she thinking? Uh, why did she get here? What's her daily life like? What are her challenges? What are her dreams? It's this that I wanted to respond to with this book.
Absolutely. And yeah. What I sincerely like to do, not just because it is a book discussion or because we have a book here, but I really would ask all of you to read this. It's a very sensitively written book, very easy to read, very difficult to get through. Every page cries out, but read it. And let me start off with, my occupational hazard, which is that I am an economist, so I will start off with some numbers, and they are startling. So,
I said, we forgive you, no one is perfect.
all right. So I'll hide behind the fact that I'm a cricketer also. But sir, the numbers, and this is a mind exercise for all of you. Think the number in your head. How many do you think are homeless in Hyderabad? How many do you think are homeless in Delhi, in Bombay? The numbers are scandalous. So can we have a sense of those numbers?
It's a question that the government has refused to answer, firstly. How a census begins is by listing census houses. They never thought about people who don't have houses. So when we made a lot of noise about it, there's, through the whole census, they choose one night and they count people through the night. And if you know how homeless people live, you survive by being invisible to the state. And that is how we've done it. So we've tried to do our own counts. I say with the authority of about 25 years of work among homeless people, roughly at least 1% of any city is homeless, adults, and about 0.5% are homeless children. So you can do your calculations.
That means 200,000 people. Right? That's the number that we are looking at in any city. Okay. Now, another exercise for you. How many people in Hyderabad, in the city of the greater Hyderabad city, what percentage of people in Hyderabad own a house? Yeah, some of you read the newspapers today. 23%. 23%. Yeah. 23%. If you count the poor, then it is close to 2%. And that's the number, those are the numbers we are talking about. And this is Hyderabad. So you can imagine Delhi and Bombay and so on. So one interesting page, and I'm just picking this up for just to get you to understand some things that the book talks about, which surprised me. And I'm saying me because I thought that I knew a lot about homelessness. So why do you mention Independence Day and Republic Day?
The whole year is, see, the state is always at war with homeless people. I mean, you have to understand that they live far from the state feeling responsible to homeless people as being the most vulnerable people. And how did when I quit the IAS in 2002, and a major part of my life was about fighting hate and so on, I also began to live in Delhi, and I said, let me, in the spirit of Gandhiji, let me think of the most vulnerable person in the city and let me start working with her. And that is how actually I started working with homeless, and getting to know who they are. There are many stories here in this book. But since he asked, Republic Day, Independence Day is the time when they are most in the name of security, the police is harshest to them on these 2 days. And there's a little story I tell you, I think maybe. So one day I was walking, I would often walk through the night, meeting homeless people, seeing. I saw this guy, a cop, he was very flashing homeless people, very brutally. And I went and asked him, I said, why are you beating them so much? He said, we've been told that high security, we have to keep this city safe from terrorists and so on. So I said, in the world, in any instance, anywhere, tell me a single terrorist who was a homeless person. Tell me one. And I said, if you have to randomly beat up people and hope that one of them might be a terrorist, go to Ubera Intercontinental Hotel, put people out, you have a higher probability of finding somebody who's a terrorist by beating up random people. But it's this whole idea that not only are we indifferent to them, we somehow treat them as people who almost by definition are dangerous people. Both the children, it's a different story, adults is a different story. We treat them as people who endanger us. And in order to protect us, the police must be brutal to them.
So those 2 days when we celebrate independence, look at the irony, and celebrate the Republic, which wrote a constitution guaranteeing rights to everybody. Those are the 2 days the homeless dread the most. That's when they are picked up and thrown away. That's so remarkable. But sir, the common feeling that all of us have is, these homeless fellows, they are the ones who are responsible for all this petty crime, all these little thefts that happen, pockets that are picked, these break-ins that happen at home. Then, if that's the case, then why don't they deserve this treatment?
See, if I say no petty crime is committed by homeless people, it's not true. But bigger crimes, if I take an average from the people sitting here, I'm sure none of us have completely blameless records. Just that let me talk about children, because there it's why does a child come onto the street? Very briefly, a child comes onto the street, a boy comes onto the street almost entirely because of highly violent, abusive fathers. That is the biggest reason. But there are children with a certain spirit where at the age of 7 or 8, when most of us could not cross the road without an adult holding my hand, they say, I've had enough. They step out and they make their own life. And it's, and I tell the stories here, and so they end up somewhere, then they get into a bus, then they reach, and they usually end up on a train and end up in a metropolis. When they get off there, if unless they are unlucky, other homeless kids, other street kids recognize them and look after them, treat them to survive. Street kids, this kind of street kid, another kind of street kid is born to homeless women. So they've not chosen the streets, and there's a difference. But children who've chosen the street, children who divorce themselves in a sense from their families, almost never beg. They're too proud to do that, and they have too much spirit. They initially grew up through rag picking and so on, but there is a time when they learn petty crime to survive. But who are we? What have we done? What have we done to, to build a world where that child is taken care of and does not have to survive in this way? But I just tell you a little story, if you like. Yeah. So when I started working with homeless children, and then many stories I could spend the evening and tomorrow telling you about them. I really came to love these kids. They called me Harsh Papa, and I found that they have, once you win their faith, and it takes a long time, an adult male figure whom they can trust is something very precious to them. Because the only adult males they met in their homes and on the streets have been very abusive to them. And so once they love you like I can't tell you how much. And my biggest heartbreak with all the government's persecution is that in order to protect the children, I had to step away. But that's another story. But I recall one where, see, the younger kids we were able to, to settle them in, and they start studying and so on and so forth. But the kids who were 15, 16, 17, it was, I realized, a little too late. And so we had them, and for a while, and I had no money. I left the civil service. I used to do some consultancies. I had some money. We hired a place, and it was really difficult to take care of them. And so you come one day, and you find they've taken off all the brass taps and sold them. Someday they pulled off the fans and sold them. Then one day I arrived, and all the mattresses they were throwing from the first floor to sell them off, etc. So I mean they're not. So it's not simple. So at some point I was saying it's just not happening. So I had a little research space, and so I told my colleagues, I said, now I'm just going to bring these 20 kids to live with us in the office. The meeting room is there and so on. And I told the kids, now nothing is going to be locked up. It's between you and us. And it was a lovely time. And most of the kids actually did very, the bonds were close. They struggled with their past, whatever. One day, 15th August, I was just reminded of that story. I get a phone call, and I just still rubbing my eyes early in the morning, from a cop. He says, I've got this kid of yours. He's got 50,000 rupees, an LCD, and a laptop. And it just took me a little while to figure out what must have happened. And I told my great lie for Independence Day. I told the cop, I said, absolutely not. This kid, I sent the kid. There was an Independence Day program, and I sort of made a story, and I only gave him all of this, etc., etc. The cop started laughing, and he said he's confessed everything to me. And I've seen this kid. He's a Bengali Muslim kid who, on Independence Day, takes a black bag, the highest security, and goes off. And he thinks anyway. So I said, I'm not complaining. You can't do anything to him. We took him back and he stayed with us for some years after that as well. Uh, what I'm trying to say is, yes, there is some petty crime, but who are we uh, to judge when we haven't created a world of any kind of care for them?
Here is a paragraph from the book, and again, some exercise for you. Think of what percentage of homeless kids take to crime or to begging. And here Harsh Mander writes, contrary to common prejudice, only 1 in 10 street children begs for a living. Begging is not common, and most of these are very young. Even fewer beg as part of organized gangs. So that stereotype that these kids are begging and are part of organized gangs, and somewhere else he talks about slumdog millionaire, but I'll come to that. Contrary also to another widely held stereotype, they are not greatly drawn to crime. Studies establish that less than 6% of street children are in conflict with any law, not more than our children. Right? So I
House children also are.
yeah, and crime within our localities, our neighborhoods, our children. Okay, so I want you to tell us a little bit about this fabulous judgment and this fabulous judge that who did something that was so very out of the course of what we've been seeing over the last 60. I'm talking of Justice Geeta Mittal and her judgment.
Uh, since begging in our culture was never a crime. Begging was something that the Lord Buddha did. Begging was something that fakirs, saints did. Begging was our culture. Part of it is actually to welcome a person who comes to beg for food at your door and to take him in, etc. That has been the old tradition. Somewhere under Victorian influence in the earlier part of the 20th century, a number of laws were introduced, one of which made beggary a crime. Now, beggary is according to this law a crime for which, for repeated offenders, you can be in prison you can be in a beggar's home for up to 10 years. Now, let me tell you that a beggar's home is far worse than a jail. In a jail, there are systems, there's a common space. I mean, they're horrible prisons. But think, if the prison is at 100, a beggar's home is like at 10 or 5. They're really horrible places. And you're tied up there. What is the definition of a beggar under this law? It includes having no ostensible means of livelihood, which literally means destitution is a crime for which you can be locked up in a place worse than a prison for up to 10 years. So the state has no responsibility. I mean, if you're destitute, what is the state doing about it? It's locking you up. And for other crimes, at least there's a process. It literally, I mean, the magistrate does what is called a summary trial. So you line up 20 people, the cops, and all these people are begging. So I know, for instance, one magistrate, he looks at their hands. Please look at your hands. If your hands are soft, it means you don't do hard work, it means you're a beggar. Only if you have coarsened hands, and on that basis, you're put into this worse than prison for a number of years. It's really one of the most horrific laws. It's just that it doesn't matter to us because we are not going to get picked up under it. So I filed a petition saying this is against the Constitution. It took about 10 years, and finally Justice Geeta Mittal, I'll be forever indebted to her. She actually passed this beautiful judgment, and normally these judgments go on saying all sorts of things over and over. Just a 25-page, very lucid, very clear judgment. which declared this to be unconstitutional. It's another story that the police continues to use this, and the government continues. We're living actually in times even before this present regime, where I'm finding that the executive decides it doesn't like a law or a judgment, it just doesn't obey it. Because it knows that nobody is going to come down and punish you for disobedience, especially if you keep locking up homeless people. So well and good. So it is now not a crime, but it continues to be treated as a crime.
She says that people beg on the streets not because they wish to, but because they need to. Begging is their last resort to subsistence when they have no other means to survive. Um, in another chapter,
Can I just say one word again? Completely randomly, the Iran, uh, one of the Iran leaders, he made a statement today in a very different context. He said, "You're not giving us dignity. We have dignity. You're not giving us rights. We have rights. The problem is whether you are recognizing our dignity and rights. So please, I'm not saying people in begging should be given dignity and rights. They have dignity and rights. It's our failure that we don't have it. And it's a challenge. I just sort of take a minute. Uh, think of a homeless, severely mentally ill woman sitting on top of a trash heap. She doesn't even remember who she is. Her hair is matted. There's excreta and vomit on her. We've all seen that woman. I would tell my students at the IIM Ahmedabad, next time you see that woman, just look at her carefully and think, she has as much dignity as my mother. And do that exercise. If life had treated her differently, she might have been where my mother is. If life had treated my mother differently, she might have been where this woman is. She has dignity. It's that we don't recognize.
So the other very brutal and very straightforward question that all of us have is, why don't these fellows work? I mean, there is so much out there. There are minimum wages. There's like such a lot of work. I need people. Everybody I know needs. Then why do these people not work?
In lieu of the preface to this book, I actually, a few months ago actually, the Chief Justice of India, in a petition that we've been having a long petition about, my intervention led to the creation of homeless shelters, and about 2,000 shelters came up for the first time as an extension of the right to life. But these shelters are worse than European and the Victorian poor houses. They're really horrible places. Victorian poor houses were created to prevent the scandal of large-scale deaths. So it's literally where living bodies are stuffed in at night and they ejected in the morning. I have been trying to explain to the judges that that's not what we were hoping for. These have to be places of where you're in a endemic crisis situation. You're taken out of that crisis situation, and then a life is, suppose there's a disaster, you're not going to live in this place the rest of your life. You should not. So it's the rebuilding of another life, etc. The judges are just not willing to understand it. I have been going judge after judge after judge, and they're getting so impatient that हमें दे दिया आपको shelters. What more can you want? So Justice Dawai went a little further and he said, these are parasites. Why should we give them freebies? And that really set me off. So I wrote this long letter, which is actually the preface of this book, where I said, They are not parasites, they work really hard. How are they going to eat? And they do the hardest work in the most desperate conditions. Uh, if you're willing to offer it to them, the thing is that there are some these labor jobs where people gather. The homeless people have their own labor jobs, and the contractors know that in code we can treat them like the worst because they have no protect, they have no social capital of any kind, they have no union of any kind. They pick them up, sometimes they lock them up, they do all sorts of brutal things to them. Another thing that I learned, actually, one of the professions, one of the livelihoods, they pick up loads, they push the karuna, all of that is there, is wedding parties. And I've never, now I can't go to a wedding without recognizing. See, there are about 36 hours of non-stop work. No one else is willing to do. So that is one of the things again that homeless men are given. They put them into this, and I look at them and I say, 5,000 rupees per plate, and this homeless man is serving us. What must he be thinking about me? What must he be thinking about all of us? And what was he thinking about this world? They work really hard, and that's something that I was trying to explain to the judge. And about freebies, I mean, I'm saying that the kind of, I might sound like now one leftist loony or whatever, but it's extraordinary what kinds of subsidies we give to the ultra rich. Yeah. I mean, it is just unbelievable. Not just tax holidays, we hardly tax them. The bad loans in, I mean, you know all of this so much better. We're asking for a tiny fraction of that, so that life, that we acknowledge the dignity of homeless person. It's not difficult. Take numbers of working men and working women's hostels, for instance, working class working men in very large numbers. For instance, a large number of them will not have to be out in the open. And also, the kinds of barriers, they have no documentation, they don't have the possibility of documentation. Voters cards, I mean, I remember going to one of the chief election commissioners and I told him, I said, they don't have an address. How are you going to ever have a document? And you are disenfranchising about 2 lakh people in this city. It should be a concern for you. And I explained. I said, why can't the address be in front of so-and-so building? Yeah. Why can't many things? So at the end of it, he said, Harsh, I totally agree with you. I'm going to give instructions all across the country that homeless people should get. All they have to give is proof of residence, proof of yes, say, you have to. So they have no identity. They don't have any acknowledgement. These are all problems that are solvable if you during the COVID lockdown they refused to give them vaccinations because they said you have to prove that you are a resident of Delhi. Now, how are you going to prove that you are? I mean, that part, of course, I made so much noise that they finally agreed to vaccinate them.
So, the numbers are miserable. When you don't have a choice, how much do you pay a daily wage labor when you hire them at one of those labor markets? 500, 600, 800. As you go further south, it goes up. As you go further north, it goes down. But the homeless, that's in the same city for the same work would get half of that. And in one chapter, that 150 rupee breakup is such a difficult one to follow. That I earn 150 rupees, I have to pay 50 rupees for food. The homeless have to pay for everything, including having a bath.
Yeah, it's just the paradox. the paradox, let me say, it's very expensive to be homeless. It's really expensive to be homeless. A, you have to buy every meal. B, every time you want to go to the toilet, every time you want to, have a bath. Uh, in Delhi, on winters, they have people who hire out blankets and wings. Each thing that we take for granted in a home, you have to pay for it at each time. I had this really witty guy once, he told me, I mean, it's really interesting if you still talk to them. He said, things have come to such a pass, I have a little mirror. He said, when I look at the mirror, I'm afraid the mirror will say, I won't show you your reflection until you give me money. So that, again, this was his joke.
Really, that every night that you have to sleep, you have to rent out a blanket. And the rental costs you 40 rupees for a 400 rupee blanket. You're paying, and the day you do not have 40 rupees, you sleep without a blanket, covered in newspaper. You need to rent a mattress. So that brings me to that amazing thing. There is a judgment which puts the blame on the fellow who died trampled by a by some drunk driver. You hear that often. These very famous film stars who drive over homeless people and go scot free. And the judge says that the responsibility is the fellow who was sleeping. Why was he sleeping there? So why do these poor sleep on the dividers and on roads? Can't they go in and sleep?
So, the importance of, I started off by speaking about empathy. Why telling stories is so important is because empathy has to begin first with imagination. I mean, you have to understand their life situation, then I can feel it. And this is a classic example. All of us would have seen homeless people, especially in weather like this. They sleep in very close to busy highways or on the central world. Now, doesn't that seem like it's so irrational? They're going to risking themselves to be run over, and that's what the judge said. And if he's such a fool to sleep so close to the highway, then why should he get even compensation under the Motor Vehicles Act? That's what he said. So I wrote a long response to him. The answer actually took me some time to understand, and it is very simple. Mosquitoes. They said that you cannot sleep in this, if you sleep in a park, you sleep in, mosquitoes don't allow you to sleep. Homeless people have learned all over that only if you sleep next to, or very close to a highway in which automobile fuels drive away mosquitoes, can you have some kind of sleep. Now I can invite you to begin to feel a little empathy now that you understand this. It means for a few hours of some kind of sleep, you have to risk your lives every night and you destroy your lungs. We found the highest levels of TB, and that's another whole story, because you're homeless. Now, until we listen, until we have time to ask, and people they're not stupid people. I'll tell you one more story, Amir, which is about homeless women. I remember we created our first homeless shelter for women, and I sat with them and I asked, sisters, you tell me what has changed most in your life. And this woman stands up and she says, for the first time after 20 years, I know now that no one will rape me until the morning. Now, if you begin to think about none of the men, including the two of us, I don't think we'll ever be able to fully grasp what life would look like to you. But even the women here, one act of sexual violence or even sexual harassment in the workplace, women sometimes struggle with it for years, for a lifetime. What would life look like to you If every night when you slept, somebody can come and rape you, there's nothing you can do to stop that man. You wake up in the morning, there's no police station that is going to register your complaint. Tomorrow night, there's no place that you can go to ensure that you will not get raped, and no NGO will come out in candlelight marches for your protection as they did for Nirbhaya. And 20 years pass, and children are born to you out of that rape who grow up on the streets. Now I ask you, can we have some empathy? And for us to build a city with no place of safety, 99% of homeless women are out on the streets because of domestic violence. That is the reason. Extreme domestic violence and no other place to go. There's no place of safety for them, and so they come onto the streets. How difficult is it a problem for a government which wants to solve the problem? Why can't we create enough places of safety which welcome a woman to come in with it? You know, one of the women who's still with us, now I can't associate with her, but she had this remarkable story. I think we first met her maybe on the station in Hyderabad. She said ever since she left her home with two small children, she went to a railway station. Then she tries to sleep there. A month passes, 2 months pass. Then sometimes this clearance and 15 orders and all that kind of thing happens. Then she gets onto a train and goes to another railway station. By the time we met her, she had gone to 8 railway stations with her children in different parts of the country because she had nowhere else to go. How complicated is it to ensure actually not a single woman has to sleep on the streets? Also, that these women, tell me that you cover yourself with grime, you try to look as dirty, as smelly as possible, in the hope that someone will not rape you. I have found it's again a strange cultural thing. Homeless men are extremely, जैसे हिंदी में दब्बू कहते हैं, I don't know what you would say. Dabbu meaning they're very submissive. They won't assert about anything. It's a way they learn to cope. I mean, it's gendered in a very dramatic way for me. Homeless women are very aggressive. They leap at you, and you have to take a long time before, because that's the only way they learn to survive. So this book is really an invitation to see them as people. And they're just like you and me in very difficult circumstances. She could be your mother. She could be my mother.
So surely things are different where we are. We South Indians, we are far more civilized, far better off, far more empathetic. So do you see any difference?
We surveyed many cities to understand. I did find Chennai the best city in a way, and I'll tell you why. Chennai was a place where I found sometimes 4 generations of homeless people living on the same patch of pavement, which means 2 things. One is that the government has done nothing to help them move beyond. But number 2, they haven't also brutally cleared them away. So sadly, yes, Chennai was the place that I found most friendly to homeless people. But in this, and I've learned this also with Adivasi people. Adivasi people in very simple language, when you say really what you want for them, their simple languages actually very gently, just please go away. Just leave us alone. We manage in these jungles. for centuries been managed. अब चले जाए. I've heard this, I've served in these areas, and I really find the Adivasi people, the dentalists, more civilized. But homeless people also, they say just, if you just let us be. I, uh, so Chennai at least does that. I didn't find that in Hyderabad, I did find that in Chennai. Sadly, that is the best I found. The other extreme is what happened in Delhi after the Aam Aadmi Party came. Kejriwal, who is your batchmate and mine, and my student as well, they both were trained under me in Missouri. I'm very proud of Amir. I'm much less than proud of how Arvind Kejriwal is turned out. But one of the things that Arvind did, and I really tried to explain to him about homelessness, etc. He said, I don't want to see a single homeless person. That the king wanted, and what they did was, they just driven them away. Now, if before he came in, if you came, and if you are familiar with Old Delhi, the Jama Masjid area, you could go to the Jama Masjid area, literally find anything between 5,000 to 10,000 people sleeping body to body in that vast area. Now that was horrible. But what is happening now is much worse. You now created an alternative, but the Maharaja doesn't want to see you. So the police just drives you away. So what we have to do then is to find dark sort of by-lanes or by-lanes where they're much more vulnerable. Here at least when there are 10,000 people sleeping in the same place, they were much safer. Somehow what I call public compassion is profoundly missing.
Yeah. So read through that book, and it really opens up just about everything that we dread, and we are happy not knowing. And this chapter on chapter points us out to what is happening right in our neighborhood. That one paragraph that says that the students at IIM Ahmedabad, the only thing that separates them from this acute misery of homelessness is one brick wall. Right across are these hundreds of children who are surviving at 10 rupees or 20 rupees a day. So, from my side, the last question, then I'll throw it out to the audience. What role does charity play? I mean, we have such big charities. A lot of us, run charities. We collect money. Doesn't this reach the
indifference of the state and the hostility of the state and the stigmatization of the state of this population does not come in isolation. It doesn't come out of the blue.
Yeah.
It reflects the middle class.
Yeah.
I will just say something in passing, which I think the Indian rich and middle class, and I travel around the world, are the most uncaring people I have encountered anywhere in the world. Our capacity to look at extreme suffering and injustice and simply look away is unmatched. And I think that each of these are solvable problems. But first, let us acknowledge that they are human beings. We're not giving them dignity, we're not giving them rights. They have rights, no less than you and I. Can we, and I've sort of gone crazy by drawing up plans and, I'm not saying anything that is not solvable. A simple thing, for instance, I'd expected to find homeless people as highly malnourished compared to other populations. It seemed like an obvious thing to me. We did a study and we found actually that they're not. And I was trying to understand how can that be. And then somebody explained to me that for a homeless person, her or his only capital is her body. If that body is not there, then how is that person going to survive? So if I earn 150 rupees pulling a rickshaw, which some years ago is what they were earning, I will spend 140 rupees on food, even if I have nothing else, because I have to. Which is why there was no lesser malnourishment among them. So one of the things that I proposed very strongly in the Food Security Act, which I was fortunate enough to be given the responsibility to write, was basically let's have places where you can get food, a good balanced meal at 10 rupees. So that instead of spending 140 rupees, if he can save 130 rupees, then he can start thinking of something else in his life. But it just, I mean, the last Prime Minister was a decent person, but he didn't believe in, he felt that this was wasteful welfare and markets will solve everything. Markets are not going to reach this set of people.
So, the data is pretty startling. It says here that we had assumed that it would be mainly the aged, infirm, and disabled people who die among the homeless. We were shocked to learn that 94% of those who died are men, and that the average age of these dead persons is 42. That's a good 27 years lower than average life expectancy. These are men who suffer from TB, carry all sorts of diseases. Some of them could be on drugs, on paint, and that's a story that the chapter tells very acutely. So, the book also talks about the solutions and things that can be done, and they are not very difficult, simple solutions. Where it hits hard is that less than 4% in any city of the homeless. और ये हम सब के लिए है, हम सब जो यहाँ पे who do charity, charity in any city in this book feeds just 4% of the homeless. That's all.
Can I just this because he talks about this. Monte Ahluwalia, being a Sikh, he said, let religious food charities handle homeless feeding. Why should the state be there? I said it cannot be charity; it has to be done with. So we did a quick survey by homeless people about religious food charities in Delhi, and it just holds up a mirror to all our belief systems. Everyone will be angry with what I say now, but let me say it. I wrote about it, and everybody was uniformly angry. So they said, firstly, to my deep shock, there wasn't a single, there still isn't a single Christian food charity in Delhi. Not a single. I've met the Archbishop, I've written about it. I've said I know Christian teachings. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why are you running these fancy St. Columbus schools and all of that? Why can't you be doing this? So anyway, there still is not a. What they said about Hindu food charity, and I can trust that this audience will not get offended. But let me say this is what the homeless people said. They said they're not interested in our needs. They're interested in their religious sort of thing. So on Tuesdays, I have to give sticky laddu or something to people. Now, I don't need that sticky laddu. I need a balanced food served to me with dignity. But no one's even concerned about what I need. This was a very profound question that they raised. The Sikh charities, the langar is the best conceptually. But what they told us that more and more of the major gurdwaras in Delhi are keeping out homeless people who look destitute. they're just not allowing them, which goes against everything that the Sikh tradition says. And the only good tradition they found was in some of the Muslim places like Nizamuddin and Damascus, where they said that you can buy tokens. I go for my food, I can buy a token, I can give it to a homeless person who can then sit on a table and order food like anybody else. And they really valued that. It's very small, but that was it. Just one aside, I'm born in a Sikh family. And my mother's brother is the head of one of the major gurdwaras in Delhi. So he called me and I wrote this, I remember in the Hindustan Times, which all the Punjabis read, etc. So he told me, he said, Harsh bete, आपके कारण से आपने क्यों ये लिखा? हमारी बहुत बदनामी हुई. We were very, how much shame you brought on us by writing this. So I said, is the shame because I wrote this? Is the shame because you do this? So he said, no, you don't understand. These, I'll say it in English, he said, these poor people, they drink and they have drugs and they don't even bathe. And, the Gurdwara's purity gets destroyed. I said, I have only one question. In Guru Nanak's time, were the poor different? And if he felt that the Gurdwara is not polluted by their presence, what's happened today? And he had no answer to give me. The Gurdwaras continue to, Bangla Sahib is one Gurdwara now which has created a different hall for the destitute. It goes again, the idea of the langar was how you treat a person. You have to treat them with respect like an honored guest and sit with them and eat. Only then is it a langar. It's come actually from the Sufi tradition. But in democratic India, we can't. In fact, when I wrote about it, I said there's this legend about Akbar coming to meet one of the gurus, and when he came at the end of the journey, he was made to sit on the ground next to a beggar. And both of them ate the simple food, and what we know about Akbar, he must have been happy to do that. I said today, if the president wants to come to a langar, he's not going to have the privilege of sitting next to a homeless person. Now, what's happened?
Yes, please. Questions? No.
It's not a very profound question, but what I would really like to know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at any point working with these poor destitutes, we assume that they always have a vested interest when they see people like us, right? And when we're being nice to them, at some point or the other in our back of our mind, we are always wondering, now they're going to ask for money, or now they're going to pull a fast one. And when you talked about that gentleman who ran away, was it your laptop that he? All right, fine. So something like this, and at any point, if you can tell us the story, were you at wit's end with this whole thing, with this whole ordeal, if you may?
I sort of, because I work with a lot of colleagues, I tried. There were two things that I learned with children, with homeless children. I learned that they will not, if they get a sense that you're trying to do charity, they will leave. They are too proud to receive charity. And I'm not saying this romantically, I'm saying this, there's a self-selection, because somebody who's proud enough to leave their home at 7 and 8 and build their life is not going to now wait for your charity. Then they have waited at home. So and when they finally come also, I see that they test you in multiple ways. They eat half a thing and put it in your mouth. You flinch and you've lost them. There are many ways, and once they can trust you, they love you so much that I can't tell you. So I explained to my colleagues that with homeless children, you cannot love them as much as you love your children, but you must love them in the same way as you love your children. Your parents, our parents, or those of you who are parents, we love our children regardless of whether they're good or bad, whether they're successful or unsuccessful. Children know that they'll be there for us. These children need to know that about us. It's not conditional. So it's unconditional love. With adults, I speak of something else, which is unconditional respect. And it is something we have to teach ourselves. Yeah? Um, Farhan, where's Farhan? Yeah. Farhan gave me a story to read which his mother had written about a homeless man who stole roti from a child, and his mm, remorse. It's a beautiful story. Don't know, and what I don't know what we would do in those circumstances. Uh, Try to don't be judgment. If you have to relate with them, don't judge. If you feel this was a problem, let us create circumstances where this does not happen. It's idle to look for the perfect victim. I understand that. But also don't judge people by standards of what we are able to do in our uh, life situation. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just saying understand. And why is she selling her body? Why is someone doing this? Why are they taking drugs? That's another very important one. The degree of, one of the sections I have is about the loneliness of being homeless. You're cut off from, festivals are one of the saddest times for them. It is a time when you have no one to celebrate with. I ask people, is there anyone you can call a friend? And they say no. Um, I've also found that apart from drugs, because of the loneliness, your family is not there, there's nobody there. They also build the most extraordinary relationships. And I keep telling you stories, that's all I have. There was this, when we were trying to take these children into care, you have to spend a lot of time, months actually, before they trust you. So there was this one kid who, I remember his name also, Ashok was his name. He said, I just cannot come with you because I have my mother to look after. And we said, who is this mother? She wasn't his mother at all. She was one of the typically mentally ill homeless women who's really frightening to even look at. This boy somehow took her in as his mother, and she would soften when she sees him, and he would collect food for her, he would take care of her, he would cover at night, because you have that need for this thing. He said, until I can't leave her alone. So then I bargained, and I took a rash decision. I said, okay, if she comes along with you. So we took a jeep and actually put him and her in and brought her into this home of ours. And the nice thing about homeless kids is that they see all sorts of peculiar people. So nobody was particularly perturbed by her behavior. And over the months, actually, she improved a lot. I mean, she would bathe, etc. So, how can we blame her? I mean, how? Don't judge is unconditional respect. Otherwise, let's not engage with them.
Yeah. Yes, your question.
So my question is, I've read a few theories saying, once our society used to accommodate a lot of nomadic groups who just roam around the country and who participate in arts, culture, etc. And because now we are not able to accommodate them, they've become homeless. I just wanted to check how much of it is.
Absolutely true. Actually, if I was giving you a lecture on homelessness, why do men come onto the streets? Why do women come onto the streets? So women, I explained extreme domestic violence. Men, what I found, it's a much harder thing to understand, but you come at a very young age and you're supposed to take care. It's very gendered. So men are supposed to be this great sort of taking care of the family. Some of us are just not strong enough. Some of us are just not lucky enough. And you feel a sense of such shame in the absence of your masculinity. How can I go back? And so you cut yourself off, so you get cut off, and then years pass and you don't go back. I mean, there is a third category, which is the nomadic tribes. and they are the ones whom we mistake. They're not strictly homeless in this sense. The denotified tribes, the ones like I know in my own city in Delhi, the people who wearing Rajasthani type costumes, where the children do little acrobatics, etc., etc. They all are from the denotified tribes, and it is because they've been criminalized. The beggary law, incidentally, apart from having no means of livelihood, also says people who do acrobatics and sing and do performances on the street are also beggars. So and it goes all the way to Europe, the Roma and Sinti. It's similar kinds of prejudices against them as well. So yeah, they are the denotified tribe. I feel it's confusing to even call them homeless. Their like context is very different, and but a lot of people who we imagine are homeless are not homeless in that sense.
They are those who are in the Lama camp. Um, you know, there is a very strong connect to cinema among the homeless, and in this book there are two very interesting things. One is that, say in Madras, you are homeless and it's pouring. It rains. When it rains, it rains. What do you do then?
I mean, you've really read the book carefully, and it's always nice for the writer to know. Yeah, and I've learned this over 25 years. They said we go into cinema and we watch the same film over and over and over again, hoping that the rain will end. But there's another guy, I don't think I've written about it, who actually says, so in places like Delhi in the winter, the people set up, one of the things that people set up are these video parlors. And they work through the night, alternating between pornographic films and Bollywood films. And homeless men and boys, they go in, and it's also a place of camaraderie, it's a place of warmth of bodies, sharing warmth, etc. And you sleep, you wake up, etc. And they say, who says, sleeping in a film is not, you reach a state, they say, when you don't know whether that was a dream or a film sequence or something. It all sort of, it's a place of camaraderie. So yeah, sorry.
How can individuals or local communities help in meaningful way?
Demand, number one, don't look down. Just don't look down on them. Don't disrespect them. There's always the dilemma, if a child asks us for money, should we give the money or should we not give the money? And it's a tough question to answer. I have an easier answer because we work with them, so okay, I figure it out to some extent, but that's not. But keep food, give the money. Okay, the child might be using it for drugs. How much of us, all of us use all our money wisely, or whatever. So, okay, you don't give money also. Don't look down on the child. Don't look down on the homeless person. That's to begin with, I feel. Number two is I think those of you who hire labor, like contractors, etc. Don't look at the homeless person as somebody who is so exploitable. It's really like the slave labor of old. I mean, it's really not different from that. Let's not do that. Thirdly, make demands from our government. I mean, in the end, I say it's not up there that there's the problem. It is here. If there was enough outrage, and when the lockdown happened, let's take a different thing and the migrants. 30 million people hit the streets, highways in the hot summer. It's the largest distress migration in human history, just for the record. Just in India, 30 million people. Most of us ask, where did these people come from? And my answer is, who places the milk at your door before you wake up? Who puts the newspapers? Who comes in and cleans your floors? Who cooks the food? Who looks after your children so you can go out to work? Who drives you to work? Who sells you vegetables, etc.? We see them and we It's almost like we wish we had an Aladdin lamp. You rub it, they should appear and they should serve us. Then we should rub the lamp, they should disappear. Why should there be people who need houses and schools and all this problematic stuff? And that is why we felt no empathy with the people who were walking the streets. Why was it not obvious to us that the moment the Prime Minister announced this that night, I just couldn't believe. I said, he's saying, stay at home and keep social distance. Social distance, anyway, is a very problematic term to use in India. We've kept social distance for 2000 years. Okay, so distance. I said, has the Prime Minister forgotten that 6 out of 10 people live in one room or less in India? How are they going to keep distance? Okay, you'll get your salaries at home. 9 out of 10 Indians are informal workers. They're not going to get anything. If you're doing this, you have to pay minimum wages to all people. If they had, we calculate it was 3% of GDP, it would be much less harm to the economy. People would not have had to go. So the state did it. I went to the Supreme Court actually to make this demand. We did many things. But there was no collective outrage. Why were we not outraged? Why did it not matter to us? That is where I think the problem is. So be kind.
Yes, I'll just come to you after name.
Good evening, sir. It is always a pleasure listening to you. 2, 3 quick things. What hits you most? Is it the policy failure or the apathy and the attitude of the middle class? That's one. The other connecting question is you have been also arguing about opposing the criminalization of the beggary. But on the other hand, there is also this organized mafia that runs. There is child trafficking. So, is there a legal or political tool which will separate both of them and help us in taking care of this coerce kind of trafficking? Okay, thank you.
So the latter, let me answer very quickly. One of the ways that we satisfy our own conscience when we don't give money to a child who is begging is he is part of some mafia and some Dickensian kind of sort of crime mafia is behind it, etc. I haven't encountered a single one in 25 years of work, and there are people who file petitions in the high courts in different places asking that these mafias be caught, and the police has given affidavits saying they haven't found such mafias. They don't exist except in our imagination as an alibi for our indifference. So that's one thing that I want to say. Children may be forced to beg by their families, which is a different story altogether, or by mothers who can't take care of them. My daughter volunteered, I remember, when we started this work, she spent a lot of time with homeless women. She told me, you have to, she said, I've never met such loving and caring mothers as homeless mothers. She said, we have to distinguish between not caring for your child and not being able to care for your child. And she said, I found they really care, but they are completely helpless. They can't stop themselves from being raped. They can't get any work. So they have to, the child has to survive, they have to teach the child to beg. Doesn't mean that so judging them, how can we judge them? Why should we judge them? And so on. So that's the latter part. The first is a very important question. I've spent much of my life in the IAS, in the National Advisory Council, in courts, trying to fight for just policies and laws. I've drafted, I've worked on them. I reach a point where, let me say, I realize that a just and equal state can only exist in a just and equal society. And we have made laws, we do have judgments. If, hundreds of examples, but that I have not been over 10 years, now it's 14 years since shelters came up. I'm not been able to convince the judges that homeless people need something more than a poorhouse. The problem is not the law, not so I have a feeling that we, the rich and the middle class in India, have a profound indifference. I was called to New York University to give a lecture on homelessness actually. And the person who was presiding was a professor called Kim Hopper. He said, I've been teaching about homelessness for 30 years. He said, I ask one thing from my students. And that is that when you first identified, were old enough to understand that somebody is homeless and sleeping on the street, what did your parents teach you? And he said that 3 or 4 things. He said the most of the kids said recoil, that they're dangerous folks out there. Then some said, no, this is, if you don't work hard, this is where you'll end up, etc. So there were things. Then I began to think, what do we teach our children when they see homeless people? And especially a child sees another child, just her age, in the pouring rain, in the cold winter. I have no doubt that the child feels distress. What do we teach the child? Not to feel that distress. We teach our children not to care. Can we change that? Once we change that, once we be kind, the state will respond to us.
When this judgment came and all these cities were made to set up shelters, there was one city that refused. Name that city. No, Hyderabad did. Delhi had the maximum. No? Yeah. No. Yeah. None in Bombay. Flouting all laws.
They said by definition, homeless people are migrants. We don't want any migrants in this city. So we won't set up a shelter. And they went in complete defiance. For a period, we had a very decent chief minister with Viraj Chauhan.
Yes.
I met him personally. And he expressed a strange kind of helplessness.
Yeah.
If I set up homeless shelters, there'll be so much opposition, I can't handle it.
Yeah. And sir, another of your students, Sandeep, who heads the narcotic, the anti-whatever drug cell in Telangana, he was telling us this one thing. So Sandeep said, baat ho rahi thi, so he said that if you think that the prevalence of drug use among the poor is high, just check out your fancy schools. Yeah.
No, there is someone there.
Oh yeah. You are first. Yeah.
Getting in the queue.
Acha, that's 1, 2 and one more, and then we end.
I just wanted to know what is done about teaching them to read and write, or maybe taught some trade, perhaps, because when they are young, they you can improve on them in life. Yeah, that's something I was wanting to know. Thank you.
Very good question. Let me explain how I learned the answer. It took me quite a while. There is somebody I greatly admire. She's passed away now. One of the great women in this country was somebody called Sister Cyril in Calcutta. She was a principal of an elite Loreto convent like all the others. One day in the evening, a homeless girl got raped just outside the gate of her school. She got it's kind of an epiphany, it's called, when you get a son. That at the time this child needs safety, my school was empty. Right? So why can't I open up the doors of my school for homeless girls? She faced any kind of opposition, but she was a total fighter. And the church opposed her a lot, the parents opposed her a lot. What she did was she built an extra floor, and she used to call them rainbow children, because also that they don't wear uniform, but also like a rainbow is beautiful, but you can never hold a rainbow in your hand. Anyway, so she created this space and said, you get a hot meal, you stay, you go. Gradually, the children got comfortable, and every period, one class would go up and do child-to-child teaching. She found it just took anything between 12 to 18 months for the child to actually settle down and be ready to enter school. So, I was searching for an answer, and I said, let me try to do this in government schools. Because in this protected environment, it's still possible, but if I wanted to on scale, and so we started right here in Hyderabad. There are 22 schools, government schools, we've adapted this way, where we said, the day school will happen, give a small part of the school for where the children can sleep. And 16, 18 hours, anyway, they have their own campus. And in those hours, we do some kind of bridge teaching. It's really worked. Now it is a government program, officially. We created 70 such schools across the country. It is now, it's another matter, the government is attacking me for other things, so they're shutting down these schools, which has been my biggest heartbreak. I don't care about, they put me in jail, they do whatever else, but what they've done to these schools has been heartbreaking. But I know it is feasible. I've written extensively saying we have all the space to ensure that not a single child sleeps on the streets. Just open up every school. The physical spaces exist, the spaces in our heart do not. And sometimes you have this Hindi film and other films. One day you become Prime Minister. Then you make a list, what would I do? In my list of 5 things, maybe I would certainly say open up every school to homeless children. It is really possible. You see, we created a Right to Education Act, which says, it sounds wonderful that, for every child within 5 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers, you'll have a government school which will give you entry. This child sleeps just outside your school. Is she going to be able to come into your school? If she has to come into your school and then go pick rats so that she gets her food and sleeps and gets raped at night, we have to conceptualize a child. Before a child can have the right to education, the child has to have safety, has to care, has to have food. And it is feasible to do this. That's a long answer, but that's...
And all that, but nothing to be proud of in my opinion. But does the civil supply system in the country, along with the poor but still having some sort of home, does it cater to the completely homeless and without any permanent address and ID card kind of a people? How does the government justify that somebody with still some kind of a house or some home, some thatched roof or something like that, but somebody who has nothing, how does the civil supplies department treat them? Thank you.
So again, a quick answer. This is what we wrote into the Food Security Act, where we basically said distributing food to those who live close to hunger is not a solution, but it is what you have to do until you create conditions where that person doesn't live with hunger. So create livelihoods, do various things. So actually what this regime is doing is exactly what we had passed in the law with the last regime, which is really 75% of rural households and 50% of urban households get half their calorie requirements almost free. The difference is that the Prime Minister has decided to put his picture on every bag as if it is largesse from the Lord above and not their right to dignity. So that's what the homeless are almost entirely kept out of it, because as I said, they don't have documents to prove, and whatever we've tried to do to explain, of course, my colleagues over now, it's been 15, 20 years, we've learned, they built relationships. So, you beg, you get an Aadhaar card, you get something else. So we're slowly trying to get some of these people included. But it's very, very difficult because we don't regard them. So they're effectively non-citizens for all practical purposes. Yeah.
Okay. I hope this question is relevant here. When we see these little children on streets, they come with a wiper and cleaner cars and all. Do you think giving them charity, giving them amount is right? Sometimes we feel they may get into drugs or we don't know what the money, or it can be a scandal. And you see these little boys, dressed as Gandhiji with silver paint on their bodies. So it's so pathetic to see that.
So it's a difficult dilemma. I mean, I also belong to the middle class. Even though I do all of this work, it is a difficult dilemma. In the book, I think at one place I quote from a government advertisement. If you give money to a child, you are. It's worth reading out if you find it. You are supporting. You're supporting every crime in possible is when you hand money to a child. So I'm saying, please, that's not the case. There is a possibility the child might misuse it. Okay, your child, when you give your child money, the child might misuse it. All these rich kids might misuse it, etc. So we found a solution. We try to stack food in the car. We put fruits, etc. But these are sort of my brief senses. Don't look down on them. Whatever you do is all right. The kids also, the world is turning around. They can also turn you around. They'll say exactly what you want to say. They might, my wife was telling me once, this kid said, I have a bad cough. So she went and bought this cough mixture. Then she came the next day again, I have that cough. How can you keep having this cough? Then again she bought it. Then she bought it a third time. And then she realized there's high alcohol content in the cough mixture. So it's okay, the kids are surviving their own life in whatever way. There are no perfect answers. Basically, don't stigmatize. Is my answer.
What we'll do is we'll collect these three questions together and
That works. So my question is, I'm not sure if you can answer it. How are our neighbors doing on, where do they stand if you see the Akhil Bharat and we progressive society, the bigger neighbors and the smaller neighbors, country-wise?
You remind me of Oscar Lewis' Cultural Poverty. The book, Poverty of Culture by Oscar Lewis, who studied at the 18th century the slums. Sir, हमने ये जो gutters पे survive करता है, we studied in Gulbarga, in Hyderabad, at Gachibowli. Years together to survive from all the gutters. आपका toilet का पानी जाता है, believe. All my colleagues staying in Gachibowli, they must have definitely seen them near KV High School. Now they have vacated them. I saw them in Gulbarga. We went and surveyed them. I think right before my marriage, after delivering 2 children, she continued, like her, most of the neighbors, delivering on her safe payments. Have you ever tried to give them a health card that is very essential? And what UNICEF or human rights organizations are doing to give them all this facility, basic food and health, education to baat ki baat. Thank you.
So very short in 3 ways. First one is a technical query that there is a classification of the social classes, upper, middle, lower middle, and then is there any class as for such persons? Number one. Number two, it's homeless seems to be a very approximate type of class. Even I am homeless. So the second is that
How are you homeless?
yeah, homeless means I am in a rented house. Okay. But see, terminology wise. Okay. Thank you. Second is there some imaginary solution for this problem is that there should be one more Mahatma Gandhi to tackle these things. Number three is being in La Makan, it's my desire. It was my desire to listen the Urdu of Harsh Mander sahab. Thank you very much.
हाँ
Okay.
I'm happy to speak in हिंदुस्तानी अगर आप लोगों को ये तो नहीं बेघर कौन है आपने पूछा बेघर की डेफिनेशन काफी साफ है जो मतलब आसमान के नीचे सोने के लिए मजबूर है या पार्क्स में या जो शॉपिंग कॉरिडोर्स या ह्यूम पाइप्स के अंदर या होमलेस शेल्टर्स में भी तो डेफिनेशन काफी साफ है उसमें आप उस परिधि में नहीं आते हैं who are they there's a category in social science where we call the socially excluded. I feel we have to create a new category which we call the socially expelled. The homeless are socially expelled. It's much more it's a very harsh exclusion. And Barbara Harris White actually had come, she's a leading economist, she said she wanted to spend a week looking at homeless people and she was the one who coined this term which I found very powerful to understand how the state treats them. जो आपने सवाल पूछा है सॉरी थोड़े लॉन्ग आंसर्स में जितना ब्रीफली देना चाहूँगा हमने ये सीखा है और ना सिर्फ हिंदुस्तान में पूरी दुनिया में बेघर व्यक्ति अस्पताल में जाने के लिए तैयार नहीं है किसी भी परिस्थिति में जाने के लिए तैयार नहीं है Now again you might say how foolish how is the I've seen homeless people मतलब सड़ रहा है उनके पैर मर रहे हैं लेकिन अस्पताल जाने के लिए तैयार नहीं है क्या कारण है Again we did a very detailed sensitive understanding and the single reason is we are treated with extreme disrespect. हम लोग समझते हैं कि अरे गरीब आदमी को सेल्फ रिस्पेक्ट से क्या मतलब है I have found that they are willing to give their life for self respect. They say कि हमें इतनी बुरी तरह से डॉक्टर्स नर्सेज मतलब I remember one lady was saying कि अगर I'm pregnant डॉक्टर करता भी है तो यहाँ ऐसे छू ले at the most फिर they taunt them कि इतने बच्चे क्यों पैदा कर रहे हैं वगैरह वगैरह so they just stay on the streets that is why we've created actually I thought I invented it and then I realized it's happening in many people in the world have come to the same conclusion we have started a whole movement called the street medicine movement where we basically have the notion of doctors and nurses willing to walk the streets from about 7, 8 in the evening till midnight, walking the streets and treating homeless people there. At some point, when somebody needs severe this thing, you build relationships in the public hospital. Another, मतलब मैं just कह रहा हूँ सिस्टम कैसा है अगर मान लीजिए बहुत अच्छा डॉक्टर भी मिल जाए वो उनको लेने के लिए तैयार हो उसका बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है फैमिली नहीं है so what our entire health system is built on the premise that a lot of the para-nursing will be done by family members who will hold the bottle, who will go and run the money, who will clean up. There's no one to do this. We have learned now that even if we finally get a homeless person admitted, we have to have another homeless person whom we pay a daily wage to be the caregiver. It's very complicated and I think that we have to understand how expulsion works. But dignity is the most important thing. No, our neighbors, it's basically a similar story, not just among our neighbors, I've seen in Africa and elsewhere as well. We live, हमारी inequality, अभी मैं 2-3 दिन पहले जो ग्लोबल इनइक्वालिटी रिपोर्ट ऑक्सफैम वगैरह निकालते हैं, we are more unequal today than even in British times. Our inequality is growing around the world, and inequality is not simply the facts of inequality. मैं कह रहा हूँ कि आपका एक सबसे अमीर आदमी 27 मंजिला घर 4 लोगों के लिए बनाता है, वो भी उस जगह पे जहाँ यहाँ यतीम खाना होता था। ऐसे शहर में जहाँ पे आधी आबादी या सड़क पे रहती है या झुग्गियों में रहती है, हम लोगों को कहना चाहिए कि इतना शर्मनाक, मतलब ऐसा बदतर इंसान नहीं हो सकता। हम कहते हैं हाउ ग्लैमरस, 6,000 करोड़ रुपए उसने खर्च लिए शादी में, अरे वाह, हाउ वंडरफुल। तो इट इज आवर एक्सेप्टेंस। आई मीन जो मिडिल क्लास की बात मैं कर रहा हूँ, आई एम ट्राइंग टू से समथिंग, आई एम सेइंग वी हैव an exceptional cultural comfort level with inequality. We think it is not only is it not wrong, it is socially and religiously sanctioned, and so there's no outrage. Or last, if you're ending here, I want to just say one more thing. With all of this, see, Azim Premji and Bill Gates in better times, they used to have this gathering once a year where they call the richest people in the country and ask them to give away their wealth.
The giving pledge.
The giving a pledge. And they would invite 1 or 2 non-rich people to talk to them. When I was invited, I socha tha yaar, to all these people, what am I going to say which will perhaps touch them? And finally, I talked to them for half an hour about the extreme kindness of the very poor to the very poor. And I had any number of stories. I'll just tell you one of them. ये हम कह रहे थे ना, सर्दियों के रातों में आपको 40-50 रुपए में कंबल और ये सब हायर करना पड़ता है. And people at the end of the day have to decide कि I have my evening meal or I'll sleep or something. So one night when I was going, when there were still 5,000 people in Jama Masjid, etc., I noticed that the very old, the very destitute, but they always had blankets, they always had mattresses. I said, ये कैसे हुआ? When I asked the homeless people, they said, but of course we know they would have died in a single night. तो इसलिए जब हम लोग रात को इकट्ठा होते हैं, पहले भी pool money to ensure that all the destitute have blankets and then we decide कि हम लोगों का क्या होगा. And they said it कि like, of course we should, और करें क्या, मतलब how can we do anything else? So I told many stories like this, and I told the super rich that we'll never be able to match this kind of generosity. I don't even expect you to. Just a tiny fraction आप कर लो.
Can I take 1 minute, please? Yeah, just a second. So you asked about that advertisement. You see this ad in this. The Delhi government says that giving charity and alms may cause traffic jams, accidents. Just look at the words: traffic jams, accidents, illiteracy, inconvenience, unemployment, bidi, cigarette, alcohol, bhang, ganja, charas, heroin, mandrax, robbery, rape, sex, theft, murder, prostitution, handicaps, assault, hooliganism. Doesn't stop there. Slums, poverty, debt, ignorance, aggression, encroachment, molestation, mugging. Full page ad. That's what we think poverty causes.
Which year was
This is.
third year. So how did Kejriwal work on this?
So that's that's the Kejriwal story.
I told the story about Kejriwal.
Yeah. But that's not the issue, Sanjay. The issue is that the point that sir is making is that is what we think. That is how all of us think.
This is how we justify to ourselves our indifference. This is what I think we need to understand, because you have to live with yourself. So I'm not indifferent, but if I give money, then this is all that is going to happen.
you know, I really wish that we could go on, but I've already crossed time by a margin. Thanks to all of you for having sat through some very tough conversation. We're very sorry that we couldn't entertain you that like we do normally. But this has been a very different and a difficult conversation. The moral is that भंवर से लड़ो तुम लहरों से उलझो कब तक चलोगे किनारे किनारे. थैंक यू.
Thank you.